Good afternoon, ladies. This is the part 3 of the eyes. Today we're going to concentrate on this side, and we're going to be looking at putting in this blue eyeshadow around here. We're going to be putting in some of these facial skin tones and hopefully getting up and doing the eyebrows so that this side is finished, and then we can concentrate on the final video on the other side. So the colours I'm using today are the Light Fast again, but as I say, just have a look at the reference photograph for yourself and just try and have a go at picking some of the colours out. So for the skin tones, we are looking at using, I've got cinnamon, Mars Violet for the shadows, dusky pink. There we go. So we've got cinnamon, got Mars Violet, dusky pink, then I've got the salmon, and then I've got the light flesh, which is the lightest of the colours, okay? And then also there's a taupe which we could use for the shadows, which is just a lighter, slightly darker tone than the Mars Violet there. Okay, I've got my Luminance White. There we go, the 801. It's actually buff titanium, that one. And then we've got, for the eyeshadows, I've got 3 blues here, which we picked out on this earlier test sheet. So you can see there we've got, I've got Ocean Blue, so we've got the Ocean Blue there. We've got a Mid Ultramarine, if you can see that there, sorry, Mid Ultramarine and a Sapphire, okay? So they're the colours we're going to use for the eyeshadow. I've got my protective sheet here so that I don't smudge anything that we've done down there. I've zoomed in just to this area for the moment, then I'll zoom back out and we can move around where we see fit. Now the first thing I've been looking at on this photograph, if you look, we've got quite a bit of this sparkly, because it's quite a sparkly eyeshadow, and also with the light hitting the skin tones, we've got quite a lot of this white flecks coming through. So the best way I thought of attacking that was using, or the way I'm going to use it is using a embossing tool. Okay, so this is mine. It's got a little metal point at the end. The nail decorative tools that you can use as well, or you can just order them and they are an embossing tool. So this is the really smallest, this is the smallest point I've got. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually impress into the paper some little dots and little marks where you can see like this here in this area. So you're going to put quite pressure in there, so you're indenting into the paper, and that means that when we put colour over it, it'll skip these little marks, so the paper will be indented and the colour won't get into there, so we'll have this sparkly bit left at the end. We can adjust it later, we can put a little bit of colour back into it if we want to. Okay, so that's what we're going to do first. So if you look carefully at your reference photograph, also check, because down here you've got some little marks and they're actually coming in that direction. So you want to make sure that if you're putting marks in, that you put them in that direction, and we've got some little dots around here. Okay, so if we get those put in first, so make sure you've got your reference photograph close at hand, using the smallest point on your embossing tool. Now don't forget, you've got to miss this part out. You've got this eyelid just here, so obviously we haven't got anything on there. It's when it comes down onto the under the eyelid, which is coming back onto the cheekbone. This is where we want this brightness. So just be careful where you actually putting it. Use the smallest point, sorry, I'll turn that round, and then put in where you think you can see them. You're not going to get them exactly as they are on the reference photograph, and you're going to get some that's slightly bigger than others, but if you can just make sure you get them coming down below just in that direction. Okay, so that's right. So I've indented quite a few marks on there. I don't know if I zoom in if you can see how it's impressed on the paper. Yeah, I think you can. Whoops, out of focus there, sorry. There you go, look, you can just see where we've indented in. Okay, so zoom back out a little bit. There we go. Come back in a bit more. There we go. Right, so that's the first bit done. So we've got that there. So when we put colour over, that's fine. If it hasn't worked quite right, or we need to add a bit more in, we can always do that with at the end with a gel pen. Okay. You can see from here that I have added a little bit of gel pen here and here, where we had the sparkly bits in the eye before. So I completed them afterwards. Sorry about that. I forgot the video wasn't running, but it's just a little gel pen and just a few little dots there, and it just adds that little bit of wetness to the eye. Right then, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to put a little bit of buff titanium underneath, just for in fact no, I'm going to put the light flesh. So I've got, well, flesh pink I've got here, which is my lightest flesh colour. So on my chart, that's it there. So it's very quite light. It's not much different to the paper itself. So I'm going to make sure it's a nice sharp point. So sharp. Yep. So I've got a nice sharp point there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use small circular motions. And I'm going to come, I'm not going to go right up into this blue, but I'm going to go sort of from about here, up this side of the eye there, where we're going to be having, that's going to be coming out into a shadow area. But if we put this buff titanium in light circular motions, and then coming out sort of at the bottom end of the blue, because the blue, you're going to turn it, you know, it's going to come out with a little bit of fleshy tones there. Okay, but you don't need to go right up here where we're going to have the biggest blue area. Okay, so I'm just doing light circular motion. So this is the base coat. Okay, but we still need it, because we're doing skin tones, we do need it to look quite smooth. Okay, so I'm holding the pencil quite far back. I'm just going to use my eraser. I haven't erased these lines out quite well enough. So I'm just going to erase these lines out just so I can just see them. Get my, right, just away the dust. So keep looking at my reference photograph. Now when we do the actual skin tones, we will be doing a lot tighter circular motions, but just for now, we're sort of just shading in a little bit. Coming down here just so we're coming back. This is now into the skin tone area. So I'm just going to leave that for now. Okay. So come around here, this is where the shadowy area is, and this is coming onto the nose section. So we're going to be having different skin tones in there. Right then, so that's got a base coat down, just going into where we're going to be putting the blue eyeshadow. Again, so let's back to the reference photograph. So you can see, like we did earlier on with the eyepiece up here, this section is all in shadow, so it's quite dark, and then it comes out into this bright blue area. Okay, so we're going to put on the lightest colour first. So we're going to put a coat, or another base coat of a light blue to start with. So I'm using my mid ultramarine blue. Okay, which is a light blue. If you're using a polychrome, you could use something like a sky blue, or even a mid ultramarine or an ultramarine blue from that range as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm looking carefully at my reference photograph as to where this blue is coming. So we've got, in fact, let's mark this in. We've got coming this way. I'm just going to sharpen this pencil up. It's a little bit blunt. Okay, right, so what I'm going to do is I'm marking this upper eyelid in, the area which is the upper eyelid first. So that sort of comes there, and then it comes round into this tear duct section there. Okay, so that's the sort of eyelid, and then that comes up here and it goes away up here, which is going to be in shadow eventually. So we're just going to map that area in there. Okay, going to have quite a bit of shadow around there, and then what we're going to do is I'm just going to guess that it's going to come down to about here, the blue. So I'm putting a light pressure, so I've moved my hold back to the sort of centre of the pencil, and now I've gone back to using some circular motions here, and I'm lifting pressure off there and putting it on a little bit more there. Okay, so it's going to come round. So we've got that blue. So I'm just going to sort of impress that in and put another layer on that bit there, so we know that that is the eyelid. Okay, and then the rest of it I'm just going to do with small circular motions. Keep turning the pencil point round so you keep that point. I'm aware of the direction, so from under the eyelid your skin structure is going to be coming this way. Okay, but just be aware how far down you come with the blue. You don't want to be coming down too far. So I'm going to say to about there. Okay, so that's how far down I'm going to take my blue. There, so it's a very light layer. You can see we've only just touched with a bit of colour. Now then, I'm going to be looking for the brightest blue, which is going to be the sapphire. Okay, so this is the sapphire. I mean, any sort of blues, bright blues will do. It's eye makeup, so you know, that's what you're really looking for. Let me zoom that out just slightly so you can get a clearer reading of the colours there. Okay, so now I'm just going to go back over this eyelid section. Now I'm going to be looking at it, so I'm putting light pressure on to start with. It comes down here, so it's coming up here, and then it comes right up here, and it's going away into shadow up here. So the tonal value, the colour of it's going to change slightly up at the top end there. Okay, so I'm just going to take a paper, one of my paper blenders. Okay, this one, I'll make sure it's nice and clean, and I'm just going to, so that will just softly, this works great with oil type pencils. What it does, it just clears that oil off at the top, so it just smooths it a little bit. It doesn't move the pigment very far, but it just gives it a little bit of a smooth out paper out. So, and then, you know, have a little piece of tissue ready just to clean that off when you need to. Right then, so looking at this eyelid, so we've got the basics in, but it looks a bit flat. So what we're going to do is give it a little bit of shape. So if you look carefully, just here, it's a little bit darker in this section, and just where these eyelashes are going to go, and then up this end here it gets darker. So for that I'm going to use this, I'm going to use the ocean blue, and I'm just going to use a nice gentle soft layer, light layer, and across the top here I'm just, with the point, I'm now just going to put in a little bit of the ocean blue there, and it gets into that corner there. It's going to be quite dark, so it's light pressure, but you can see it's just a little bit of it there. And then on the bottom I'm just going to gently go across there, just so that we've got a little bit of definition. And then obviously as we come up here, I'm actually going to fill most of this in and fetch it down, carefully looking at the reference photograph. So it's going to come down to about here, and that's where the blue then starts to come through more. So I'm just layering up a little bit there. Okay, so that's mapped in where the shadow area is going to be. So that's changed it slightly. Then I'm just going to go back. I'm going to use the lighter blue, and I'm just literally going to blend over the two blues that we've got there, the sapphire and the ocean blue, with the light blue, and I'm just going to sort of soften them into each other a little bit there. Okay, and then I'm going to use the paper stump again, make sure that end's clean, and then I'm just literally going to soften off, because we want a nice soft blend in here. So I'm just evening it out. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on, just evening it out a little bit, and then back in with the main colour, which is the sapphire blue, and then just brighten up where that blue really is quite bright, going over the darker sections as well, because that will emphasise on them. Coming back up here into this blue. Okay, and then it goes away into that darker section. So in the darker section, you need to darken it up a little bit. So what I'm going to use is, I'm using the Midnight Black. Okay, so the Midnight Black's got a blue tinge to it, but it's quite dark. So from the eye section here, you can see I'm just literally lightish pressure. I'm just fetching it down, looking carefully at the reference photograph. Okay, so it doesn't come down too far before it starts to turn into a blue. There we go. So just for now. We can always go back and darken that back up later. Okay, so you can see now we haven't just drawn one blue line across there. We have got some tones in there as well. And we can come back. I'm just going to actually look at the reference carefully. Yeah, I'm just going to put a little bit more of the blue. And then I think it needs to be toned down a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking the ocean blue and I'm just going to very lightly go over the top of that, and it just dampens it down a bit. So it takes that little bit of it's just a little bit too bright, but if we put that in there, that's fine. And then here, where it gets a bit darker, I'm just going to put a little bit more pressure on the blue and underneath the eyelid as we're coming into this, the eyeshadow area there. Okay, so we've got that section in, so we're now starting to see where the eyelid is from that. So now we need to get in the rest of this blue and then get the eyelashes in. So we've done this stippling, so what we should see now, as we build the blue up, we should see these start to stick out. So again, now, so that's the eyelid, which is sort of the inside of the eye, and then as we're coming out over, the direction of form will be that way, there. So if you look, it comes across and then it starts to lighten. This is where the lighter bit of the cheekbone will be. Okay, so let me just clear some of this. I've got a little bit of pencil marks in here, which I don't want. So let me just clear that off. Give it a good brush away, so we've got no dust bits on there. That's better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with, we put some buff titanium down here so I can see where that is. So now I'm just going to start with this paler blue. So it comes out sort of squared off a little bit there, and then I'm turning the pencil, so I'm on a light pressure and I'm doing circular motions, but I am going in that direction of how it's coming out from underneath the eye. And then we've got quite a bit of shadow here, so I'm just re-going over the area where we've been before. Okay, so if you look carefully at your reference photograph, so it comes down here and then it sort of comes out, and then we've got this shadow area here as well. So that's the blue section, so that's the sort of area that we're covering now. Okay, so I'm just going to go over it again. So I've done it a couple of times with this pale blue. Okay, and coming round that section there. So you can see the blue starting to build up a little bit now. I'm going to use my paper stump and I'm just going to softly, so I'm not putting a lot of pressure on, I'm just softly, and what you see it does, it just actually softens the colour off a little bit, and it puts some of it into some of the the white tooth of the paper. Right, so we can see that's building up nicely. So now I'm going to use a bit of the brighter blue is sort of in this area here. So again, I'm going to start, so this is the sapphire blue, the brighter blue. So I'm going to start here, checking my reference photograph all the time. Okay, so it's there. So don't forget, some of this now is going to be turning into a shadow, a grey area. So I've got a small area there, and then as I come out, I'm just going to release the pressure off a little bit into that paler blue. So it's going to be paler at this end. And as you can see now, you can see where you've done the indentations earlier. Can you see how they're starting now to protrude out? So it's giving you that look of the white skin glistening through. Okay, so I'm going to come up here. Okay, so the darkest bit, and then just release the pressure as you come down to the bottom where you put the light blue. You don't need to go all the way down to the bottom because we've got to graduate this into a skin tone. So it's a bit like when we sort of did this crossover between the shadow and the makeup. We've got to get all the colours in but make them look seamlessly blended. Okay, so I'm putting a little bit more pressure on as we come up here because this is going to be a darker section. Okay, back across there. So now you can see the blue starting to come up. So now I'm going to get the, where's the ocean blue gone? There we go. So again, look at the reference. So up here it's gone, it's sort of really dark. Whoops, there it's quite dark. And it's got a bit of the taupe or the violet, Mars Violet in there on top of the blue. So let's get the blue in first. So I'm using the ocean blue. Okay, so that's going to come on top of this blue here. So I'm holding the pencil quite far back. So I'm looking at it and it's going to sort of come across. There's not going to be much of it in this area. That's going to be quite a bright blue. And then it sort of comes out that way there. So I'm just going to put some of that blue there. Okay, so that's darkening it up a little bit there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my white, because you can see it looking quite grainy, and I want to start to get it to looking a bit smoother. Well, it's actually buff titanium, this one. So what I'm going to do now is just blend in these layers. So we've got the buff titanium down here, which is coming into a lighter blue, and then we just put a little bit more pressure on this area here. Okay, we'll put a couple more layers on there, so we've got a little bit, so you can see it's changing colour gradually there. Come round here again. I'm following the direction of the way the skin would be going. Put the white on this eyelid as well. Okay. Put it round there. So I've not put heavy pressure on, but it's sort of medium pressure, but it's just blended it in a little bit more. So we can see it's now starting to smooth out a little bit. So, keep looking at your reference. So we need this to really pop out a little bit more and this darken up a little bit there. So I'm just going to go back over now with this pale blue because I want to make sure we get that tonal value in there. Okay, so I'm coming back over, just giving a bit of this light blue there. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to put a little bit more pressure on. So I'm holding the pencil a little bit. And where you've got this lighter blue, not right into the dark area here, just from this bluer section here. And down that bit there. I'm just going to just layer in some of that lighter blue on there. So that's giving that bit of an edge. And then we need to come out darker over here. So, start with the sapphire blue again. Right at the very top, I'm just going to put some small circular motions, mid-pressure, lift it off as we come out here into a much darker area. And then up here, just lift it away so it sort of comes at that sort of angle there. And then we're going to really now darken up this section with the ocean blue. So I'm doing some small circular motions here. So it's really dark in this corner here. But lift off pressure here because we're going to change that colour, that hue, into something else. So I'm just coming around this section here now. So right near this eyelid. Right, I'm just gonna, so I'm using small circular motions and I'm just lifting the pressure off. So this isn't as dark here. So most of the dark area is going to be concentrated up here. Okay, but we don't want it black, so we've done it with the blue, and then it comes sort of to here. Make sure you keep that, maintain that crisp eyelid section there. Okay. Then we've got a little bit of the darker blue here. Okay. And then I'm just going to go back over again with this buff titanium just to blend that in a little bit more around here. Okay. And then I'm just going to leave the pressure off. So you can see it's getting darker here at the back end now. So you can now start to see how it's fitting in with the shadow areas there. So now let's put a little bit of the shadow area in. So we'll start with the Mars Violet, okay? Because this has got a bit of a violet tone to it, which fits in with the blue. So from what I can see on the reference photograph, let me just put in, I didn't put in, right, so the light, where's the light flesh? Cinnamon, dusky pink, oh it's there. Right, so this area here where we put the buff titanium, I'm actually just going to put in a little bit of light flesh, just to, because it is going to be coming out into a fleshy tone. So I'm just coming under the blue. Okay. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually tightening up some of my circular motions here, so because I'm trying to get a much smoother effect here on the skin tone. So this is the very light flesh colour. So like I say, it's very much like the paper colour, or what paper I'm using. It's very much like an off-white with a slight pink tinge. Okay, so that's that bit there. So then what I'm going to do is, with this Mars Violet, if we look, we've got to continue, pick it up from where we left it there. So this section is a little bit darker, but the inner side's a little bit lighter. So we'll do this light section, pull it, you've got a little bit of this colour coming through here, and then right up on here, and then it sort of fades out into a more of a salmony pink, which we've got, and we're going to then pull it down into the skin tones. Okay, so if we start about here, so we're using light pressure, so hold the pencil backwards, coming up here to where it gets a little bit darker, so you can either go over it a couple of times or put a little bit more pressure on. Okay, there, pull it off a little bit here, so we don't want it so dark. Goes into where that blue is, so you can just go over the very edge of the blue with it, and you'll see that it starts to blend in really nice. Looking at your reference photograph all the time. So it's quite a raggedy edge just there. Keep coming round, circular motions, and then just put that extra bit of pressure on there. Okay. And then just blend that in with your paper stump a little bit. Okay. Right then. I'm just going to pause for a minute